What if the worst begins not when the body dies, but when it is no longer there to distract the soul? We think of death as a release, a sleep, a fading, an end to noise. But in Dante's universe, death is not the conclusion. It is a corridor, a passage into clarity, a place where masks fall away and the true weight of a life is finally felt. Not in silence, but in screams. Not in darkness, but in light too sharp to bear. There, in the hollow depths of hell, there is no more pretending, no polite evasions, no culture to soften the blow of who we have been. There is only the consequence of our choices, unfiltered, eternal, and precise. We walk through life believing in forgiveness, in change, in some final mercy that will sweep away the fragments of who we were. But Dante, in his bitter mercy, strips this illusion bare. The souls in his Inferno are not tortured arbitrarily. They are not victims of fate. They are expressions, eternal echoes of the very selves they sculpted in life. The lustful are tossed by winds not because God is cruel, but because they never knew stillness. The liars are buried in flames because truth was never their dwelling place. The traitors are frozen in ice, not by judgment, but by the cold betrayal they poured into others. Hell, in Dante's vision, is not an invention. It is a reflection, not a punishment imposed, but a state revealed. And so we ask, if our souls do not die, if something of us survives this fragile flesh, then what are we preparing it for? A banquet? A reward? Or something far more terrible, the unbearable intimacy of facing our own lives without the distraction of time? Dante entered the underworld not as a theologian, but as a man lost. A man surrounded by ruin, in society, in politics, in the church, and perhaps most brutally, within himself. And so, guided not by hope, but by the poet Virgil, a pagan, a ghost, a voice from a world without redemption, he begins his descent. This is not a journey of salvation. Not yet. It is first a confrontation, a stripping away of illusions, a mirror held not to the face, but to the soul. The damned do not scream to be freed. They do not beg for second chances. They do not even weep for what they have lost. They are fixed, suspended in their sins, and what is most terrifying, they recognize themselves in their fate. That is perhaps the most chilling part, the absence of resistance. The way their suffering fits them like a second skin. Think of the lives we lead. How often we lie to ourselves about what we want, about what we've done, about who we are when no one is watching. We bury our contradictions beneath routines, beneath identities, beneath roles and titles, in the endless noise of modern survival. We are taught to move on, to distract, to consume, to chase. But what happens when all the chasing ends? What happens when there is no more pretending? In Inferno, hell is not filled with monsters. It is filled with people who look like us, think like us, loved, feared, bled, desired, just as we do. And yet somewhere, something fractured. And they never looked at it, never mended it, never stopped to ask, who am I becoming? They didn't wake up in torment. They built it, choice by choice, denial by denial, a cathedral of avoidance that now holds them like a tomb. We often say hell is for evil people, murderers, tyrants, those who deserve it. But Dante's genius lies in revealing that deserve is a weak word. No one falls into hell by accident. They arrive as the final result of a life lived in a particular direction. No dramatic moment, just the slow erosion of conscience, the quiet compromise, the habit of looking away. What if that is the real danger, not one great sin, but the gradual sculpting of the soul into something that cannot stand the weight of truth? Dante forces us to imagine a world where justice is not delayed, not debated, not politicized, but simply real. As real as the breath you take, as inescapable as your own heartbeat. A world where we no longer explain ourselves, no longer justify our wounds or our wrongs, but must live within them forever. It is not the flames that terrify. It is the recognition, the unbearable closeness of the truth. When Dante writes, "Abandon all hope," it is not a threat. It is a diagnosis. A line drawn not by divine wrath, but by the soul itself. Hope has no place where denial reigns. And what is hell, if not the place where denial has finally run out of road? We fear death because we do not know what lies beyond. But what if we should fear instead what lies within, that small, silent architecture of self that no one sees but us? What we are building, day after day, word after word, gesture after gesture. And so the question remains, if the soul does not die, then what are we shaping it for? A paradise of excuses? Or a reckoning as cold and clear as the eyes of the damned? Dante is not telling us about hell to frighten us. He is reminding us that eternity is not far away. It is already here, inside every moment where we choose who we are becoming. And the only fire we should fear is the one we carry within. What if every moment of your life was a brick? Not in some abstract metaphor, but in the purest, most terrifying sense. Every glance avoided, every kindness withheld, every word sharpened or dulled, every betrayal whispered in the safety of one's own mind. What if each of these was a brick laid in silence, forming walls you cannot yet see? This is the world Dante walks us into. Not a place of fire and screams, but of architecture, of deliberate, invisible craftsmanship. A city built from the marrow of human choice. The Inferno is not chaos. It is not madness. It is order, chilling in its symmetry, terrifying in its justice. Each soul finds its place not by random judgment, but by resonance. They do not protest where they are sent. They fall into place with the stillness of inevitability, as if they had known, all along, that this is where they would end. Here, beneath the earth, the soul has no lies left to tell itself. In the second circle, the lustful swirl endlessly in the grip of a storm they can neither escape nor understand. Their bodies are long gone. No more sweat, no more touch, no more eyes to meet in candlelight. But the desire remains. Raw, howling, endless. What once thrilled now punishes. What once connected now isolates. How much of our lives are lived in storms like these? Not literal ones, but emotional cyclones. Attachments mistaken for meaning. Obsessions mistaken for love. How often do we let our longings steer us, trusting that the ache in our chest is proof of depth, when it is merely a hunger we are too afraid to face? Dante is merciless in this clarity. The punishment is never foreign to the crime. It is the crime magnified, echoed back in eternity. A perfect feedback loop of who you chose to be. In deeper circles, the liars lie submerged in burning pitch. The flatterers wade through excrement. Hypocrisy is punished not with chains, but with the suffocating irony of golden cloaks lined with lead. It is not vengeance. It is reflection. The soul sentenced to feel, finally, inescapably, the weight of its own illusions. And the worst? The betrayers. Those who made love a currency. Who turned trust into a weapon. Who used intimacy as leverage. They are buried in ice. Not flames. No heat remains. Just a stillness that devours. Their faces locked in masks of agony, but unable to scream. Because even suffering, to them, has become unfamiliar. The soul frozen in the posture it last chose to adopt. It is this that chills more than fire ever could, the sense that hell is not an imposition, but a portrait. And it begs the question, what posture are we taking now? In traffic, in offices, in bedrooms, in moments where no one is watching. In conversations that could have gone deeper, but didn't. In silences we didn't break. In truths we dressed up just enough to pass. Are these not the bricks? And if so, who is the architect? We speak of freedom, of identity, of becoming who we are. But Dante knew what most modern minds dare not face, that freedom is not just the ability to choose. It is the responsibility for what those choices become. A man who deceives, even once, becomes not a man who lied, but a liar. A woman who forsakes a friend does not merely fail, she becomes the one who, in that moment, decided her comfort outweighed another's pain. The act does not pass. It accumulates. Dante's world is not built on belief. It is built on becoming. And perhaps that is what we have forgotten. In the safety of screens and distractions, in the blur of progress and therapy and curated self-discovery, we have forgotten the soul is not a theory. It is a construction. It is being built, even now, word by word, omission by omission. And at the end, when time has nothing left to offer, we will not be asked what we believed. We will be shown what we built. In this way, Dante's hell is not cruel. It is honest. Brutally, unsparingly honest. It is the first place in the Divine Comedy where everyone belongs exactly where they are. There is no hypocrisy left, no negotiation, only recognition, and that is why it horrifies, because it strips away every last illusion that we are better than what we've done. There is no modern comfort here. No, we were doing our best. No, we didn't mean it. There is only the shape the soul has taken, and the place in the architecture that shape demands. And so Dante descends, step by step, not as a voyeur, but as a warning, as a mirror. His face pale, his heart pounding. Not because what he sees is foreign, but because it is too familiar. Each soul is a version of himself, stretched into an eternity of consequence. And by the time we realize this, we too are descending, not through sulfur and myth, but through memory, through regret, through that quiet sense, known only in moments of solitude, that something within us is being etched into permanence. And the question returns again, not, what if we die? But what if something survives? And if it does, what has it become? There are places we do not enter with our feet, but with our eyes. Places buried not in the earth, but behind the face in the glass. That moment, silent, still, when the bathroom light flickers and you look too long, and the person staring back is not just skin and fatigue, but something deeper, something watching. You turn away. You always do. Because somewhere in the depths of that reflection lies the same clarity Dante met beneath the surface of the world. Not punishment, not myth, but memory sculpted into form. And what if this is the real hell? Not fire, not demons, not judgment, but recognition. That the self we build is unchangeable now. That we are what we did, not what we hoped, not what we promised, not what we meant. In the world above, we lie constantly, not with words, but with rhythms. A handshake conceals contempt. A smile hides the fatigue of never having been seen. We laugh when we are not amused. We nod when we should scream. We say, I'm fine, because it is easier than saying, I'm terrified. The body becomes a costume. The voice becomes a negotiation. The days blur, not because time is fast, but because the soul has stopped participating. And yet below, where Dante walks, all of that dissolves. There, the liar is not dressed. He is the lie itself. The flatterer becomes flattery. The traitor becomes ice. The storm-tossed lovers are no longer lovers, nor even people. They are winds now, colliding endlessly, because collision was all they ever knew. This is not fantasy. This is us, without masks. The ego peeled back. The story undone. Because every civilization, no matter how enlightened, builds itself on the denial of one thing. That one day, the soul will look back. And not everyone will like what they see. We build empires of distraction. We invent industries to keep us from pausing long enough to feel. We wrap ourselves in sound, in light, in stimulation so relentless that even our dreams are borrowed from other people's desires. Look around. Cities pulse like neural circuits, steel skeletons of ambition, flashing signs promising meaning at 70% off. But behind the glamour, the glass, the concrete towers, there is a quiet sob. The sob of the soul, suffocating in a body it did not choose, living a life it never questioned. Dante saw it long before it took this shape. He saw it in the church, selling salvation like currency. In rulers cloaking bloodlust with banners of virtue. In friends who praised you while sharpening knives behind their backs. He saw the mask of holiness stretched over rot. He saw that hell was not beneath us. It was among us. It was how people smiled at you while plotting your fall. How they spoke of justice while punishing the weak. How they preached heaven but lived like tyrants. And worst of all, how they believed their own lies. In our time, we call this progress. But has anything changed? We no longer torture the body, we torture the mind. The prisons have become digital. The chains are made of algorithms. And the screams are quieter now, typed in private chats, posted at 3 a.m., drowned in scrolls and likes and empty hearts. No one burns, but everyone aches. You can see it in their eyes. The flicker of loss behind curated smiles. The rage behind polite applause. The despair buried beneath wellness hashtags and synthetic gratitude. It is the same despair Dante mapped in circles. But now we cannot name it. because naming it would mean facing it, and facing it would mean pausing the performance. And the show, after all, must go on. But in the Inferno, the show is over. The masks have melted. The roles are gone. There is only the essence of what was. And no one claps. No one forgets. The stage lights never dim. Imagine a world where you could no longer lie about who you are. Not because someone stops you, but because the soul simply refuses. Imagine being locked forever in the posture you most often assumed. Your smile frozen just slightly too wide. Your eyes tilted with calculation. Your hands always reaching for more. Would you recognize yourself? Or would the face you wear in eternity be so unfamiliar that you'd scream to forget it? Dante's vision offers no comfort, no moral applause, no clean redemption arc, only the brutal stillness of consequence. And perhaps that is what our world needs most. Not another salvation, not another reinvention, but a pause to listen, to hear what the soul is saying beneath the noise, to feel what has been buried beneath achievement, to let the mirror show what it has long been waiting to reveal. Because when the mirror refuses to lie, we are no longer free to pretend. And in that terrifying honesty, something sacred begins. Not hope, not forgiveness, but awareness. The first step, the final descent, and maybe the beginning of something else. It begins not with a scream, but with silence. A silence so complete it is almost violent. A soundlessness that floods the chest like rising water, not drowning, but cleansing. As if something once buried in the marrow of the self begins to breathe. Not speak, not shout, just breathe. You feel it when the world grows too quiet. In the pause after a long breath. In the moment between ending a sentence and clicking the screen away. In the stillness before sleep, when the body collapses but the soul stays wide awake, watching from behind your eyes. This is where it begins. Not in churches, not in books, not in the declarations of a new life, but here, alone, uncertain, untouched. In the space Dante passed through with horror. The inner desert, the soul's half-finished ruin. You do not know what this feeling is. You try to name it. Restlessness, depression, fatigue. But those are the names you were given by a world that never dared enter this room. Those are the safe labels, the ones that allow you to medicate it, schedule it, explain it away. But this is not a problem. This is an uprising. You wake up in the same bed, wear the same face, walk the same steps, but something in you has started to flinch at the lie. The polite lie you have called a life, the performative calm, the bright, rehearsed expressions, the desperate chase for meaning in other people's eyes. And suddenly, it sickens you, not with rage, but with sorrow, because you realize you were the one who built the prison, not alone, not consciously, but piece by piece, you laid it, smiling, nodding, apologizing for being too much, too quiet, too complicated, too sensitive. You gave your depth away for the safety of shallows. And now here you are surrounded by mirrors, none of which reflect you. This is where the rebellion begins. Not in words, but in refusal. The refusal to keep pretending. You still show up, still do the things. But the rhythm has shifted. You no longer laugh when you don't mean it. You no longer rush to fill the silence. You no longer force your eyes to glisten on command. You begin to sit with the ache instead of running. And in doing so, you hear it. The truth. Low, unshaped, ancient. It does not speak in sentences. It has no interest in logic. It rises like smoke from the cracks, this subtle, unbearable knowing that you were never meant to live like this. The faces around you remain unchanged. The world keeps spinning in its fever. But something in your spine begins to realign. You stop reaching for rescue. You stop praying for transformation. You simply observe. Yourself. Others. The subtle transactions of the soul that pass for affection, for community, for love. You feel the space between gestures. The weight behind glances. The hollowness of certain smiles. You do not hate them. You simply see them for what they are. Desperate attempts not to drown. And in that awareness, something softens. Not pity, not condescension, compassion. Because you recognize their mirrors too. Their frozen selves. Their quiet hells. This is the rebellion that no one sees. The quiet shift. The imperceptible refusal to betray yourself one more time. You do not announce it. You do not post it. You live it. And it changes everything. Not all at once, but cell by cell, shadow by shadow. And one day, you hear a sound you had forgotten. Your own voice. Unfiltered. Not shaped for acceptance. Not tuned to impress. Just there. Like a river that never dried, only went underground. And now it returns, not roaring, not demanding. Just moving. Alive. And you know, you are not free yet. You are not whole. But you are awake. And no one can take that from you. It does not shatter. It peels. Like old paint on a childhood wall, the kind once bright with stories, now flaking with time. You run your fingers along its surface and feel the layers give way, not all at once, but piece by piece, quietly, without resistance. That is how the beautiful lie begins to fall apart. You had held it for so long. This image, this polished version of yourself built carefully from the world's praise, from approval, from fear of being seen naked and unfinished. You carried it like armor, wore it like skin, but it was never you. You told yourself it was necessary, that fitting in was survival, that smiling was safer than speaking, that agreement was easier than truth. And for a time, it worked. The world gave you a place, not yours, but a place. And you sat in it, trying not to breathe too deeply, afraid the illusion would slip. And now it does. Not because someone exposes it, not because something dramatic happens, but because your soul, tired from years of compliance, simply stops pretending. There is no applause for this moment. No music swells. No hand reaches in to rescue you. You are alone in a room, or a car, or a silence, and suddenly, you see it. The life you built around the lie. The choices you made not because they were true, but because they were expected. The people you kept around because they reflected back the version of you were trying to believe in. And now you can't believe in it anymore. Because something inside you has remembered the sound of your own voice. Not the one that seeks validation, but the one that just speaks. The one that doesn't care if it is understood. The one that whispers instead of performs. And when you hear it, really hear it, the scaffolding begins to fall. You sit still as the mask melts, and the pain comes not like a storm, but like a fog. Thick, slow, heavy with memory. It is the pain of every moment you abandoned yourself. Every time you said yes when you meant no. Every time you laughed when you wanted to cry. Every time you stood in a room full of people and felt more invisible than if you had never been born. The pain is not punishment. It is recognition. It is the soul finally telling the truth, not in words, but in weight. You may try to go back to the conversations that once defined you, to the friendships that only thrived when you were quiet, but they feel different now. Hollow, fragile. You smile, and it doesn't reach. You listen, and the words fall like stones. Because now you see the strings behind the puppets, the scaffolding behind the stage, the performance in every "how are you?" And it breaks your heart, not because it's fake, but because it's everywhere. This world we built, of surfaces and symbols, of curated selves and rehearsed compassion, it trembles under the weight of a single unfiltered truth. And the moment you stop pretending, everything starts to feel wrong. The job, the rhythm, the mirrors, even the clothes feel like costumes now. You walk through your life like a ghost in your own home, touching things that no longer hold you, smiling at memories that no longer remember you. But this is not despair. It is something deeper. It is the undoing of the spell, the soft, irreversible collapse of who you were told to be. And when it breaks, when the last fragment of illusion crumbles into your hands, you do not cry out. You do not run. You sit, quiet, hollowed, awake, and something stirs. Not joy, not yet, but space. And in that space, the first breath of your real self. It is faint, and it does not know what comes next. But it does not lie, and that is everything. And then, there is quiet. Not the absence of sound, but the absence of resistance. No more struggling to be understood. No more rehearsing who you are supposed to be. Just the slow breath of being unguarded, unashamed. You are no longer falling. You are no longer climbing. You are simply here. The ruins of the lie around you, still warm with memory. The echo of your own voice, tender from disuse. And the soul, no longer screaming for meaning, no longer demanding escape, just watching. What remains after everything false has dissolved? Not answers, not enlightenment, just this, presence. Like a candle lit at the end of a long corridor. Like the way dusk softens the sky, not with drama, but with grace. You do not know what comes next. You no longer pretend to. But for the first time, that does not frighten you. Because you are no longer running. This is not peace. Peace implies a battle one. This is quieter than that. This is what waits beneath every war we wage with ourselves. Beneath every projection, every performance, every attempt to fix or escape or transcend. It was here before you forgot yourself. It will be here when you remember again. You do not need to speak. There is no one left to convince. No audience waiting for your transformation. No lover who will finally see you when you become someone better. No future version of yourself clapping from the wings. Only now. Only this. Only breath and presence and the soft ache of having finally stopped pretending. In Dante's journey, there is descent. There is terror. There is fire and silence and unbearable recognition. But there is also emergence. Not redemption, not yet, but direction. A shift. The soul having faced itself and not turned away. You are not what you feared. You are not what you escaped. You are what is left when everything false is burned. And so you walk, no longer to escape punishment or earn salvation or build a name. You walk not toward a destination, but within a becoming. Each step not a search, but a surrender. A letting go of everything you thought you needed in order to be whole. There are no trumpets here. No chorus of angels or heavens torn open. Only wind. Only dusk. Only the quiet rustle of the self, shedding its old skin. You are not here to be understood. You are here to be. And that is enough. Let the silence hold you now. Let the stillness wrap itself around your ribs like a forgotten language. There is nothing to reach for. Nothing to earn. Nothing to fear. The descent has ended. The performance is over. And what remains is real.